How does Apple Podcasts search? Apple tells us. The latest from our daily newsletter at podnews.net. Apple Podcasts has published details of how search in its app works. The post new today includes clarification that ratings and reviews aren't factored into search results. You'll find it linked from our show notes and our newsletter today. Sounds Profitable has announced the first credible study of the profile of podcast creators in America. The research will be yearly to track trends and changes in the creator space. It's called The Creators from Sounds Profitable and Edison Research, and you can register for the free webinar at soundsprofitable.com/thecreators. The Reuters Institute and University of Oxford has released the Digital News Report 2022, interviewing a total of 92,000 people across 46 countries. The data shows podcasting use is growing again after a pause due to the pandemic. Now, 34% of people in surveyed countries listen to podcasts. During Pride Month, Google Podcasts is blocking and hiding some podcast episodes, apparently because they use the word lesbian. RPG Realms of Peril and Glory's June the 13th episode, visible everywhere else, isn't available on Google Podcasts in the US, UK or Australia, even to logged in over 18 users. The podcast creators say there's nothing adult in this episode at all. Transistor's Justin Jackson has reported Acast to Canadian law enforcement and Acast's email service provider after the company targeted Transistor customers. Acast's email provider says that Acast's use is against their terms of service, and Jackson, who's previously worked for an email company, considers the emails are illegal under Canadian law. The company has recently targeted customers from Podbean, Captivate, Blueberry and others using competitors' logos and sending multiple follow-up messages to each podcaster. A spokesperson for Acast tells Podnews today that the emails are part of our continuing marketing strategy, which we don't currently plan to change. The Podcast Awards are open for nominations from July the 1st. TED has launched the TED Audio Collective Plus, a new subscription on Apple Podcasts, so has One Podcast, an Italian podcast publisher. After being purchased by Spotify at the end of last year, podcast host Whooshka is to close on August the 31st. Podcast hosting customers are being invited to migrate to Megaphone. Triton Digital released the Australian podcast ranker for May. Of interest, now exclusive to the Listener app, Hamish and Andy's Remembering Project saw 310,000 downloads in May. The show's last season in August, when it was available everywhere, did 572,000 downloads. The ranker lists participating publishers only and doesn't list the ABC, the country's largest podcaster. Sports podcaster Blue Wire wants to challenge ESPN and Barstool Sports, says an article in Front Office Sports that we link to today. And kids publisher Pinner has launched what they call the first voice-activated interactive podcast. In People News, Matty Stort has left Amaze Media Labs. In an email to staff seen by Podnews, the former iHeartRadio VP says he plans to continue to operate Jam Street Media and work with more companies. And in podcast news, starring Jodie Foster, Samira Wiley and Amy Hill, Feminist Files looks at the behind-the-scenes politics of Title IX and the amazing women who changed the world but have never been recognised. Hosted by Lee Fondowski, it's supporting Rise Up, an organisation that seeks to promote equality for women and girls around the world, and is from Frequency Media. Welcome to Provincetown launches today from Rococo Punch, Roomtone and Stitcher. Recorded last summer, it follows 7 local people, each with their own agenda, in Provincetown in Massachusetts in the US, a 2-street beach town known as a gay vacation hotspot. And it's disco time! And this is Sylvester. Launching next week, exclusive on Spotify, is Sound Barrier, hosted by Jason King, a podcast looking at the career and cultural impact of Sylvester, including interviews, recordings and demos that have never been heard before. And that's the latest from our newsletter. To read all the stories and subscribe, we're at podnews.net.